My Hero Academia Chapter 407 is finally out, and with it, the story takes a bit of a turn as we rewind back to the origins and history of All for One, both a person and a quirk. Finally, we get to learn more about this mysterious duo. But before we begin, don't forget to Detroit smash that subscribe button to keep up to date with all the Lunchtime Crew / My Hero content. And so, without further ado, let's jump right into My Hero Academia Chapter 407, titled Paranormal Orphan. This chapter opens up on a seemingly random busy city street where we see an unfortunate and disheveled woman sitting and drinking alone on the ground. The narration reveals that this unfortunate woman is a prostitute, and unbeknownst to her, she's contracted a mysterious disease causing a small spike-shaped tumor to grow on her left arm. However, the woman hasn't noticed this tumor that has been on her body for the past 8 months, as all of her energy is being drained by the 2 babies growing inside of her. 2 babies revealed to be none other than Yoichi and All for One. That's right, the 2 brothers are actually twins, and this is their mother. Unfortunately, before we can learn any more about the mother of the 2 most important characters in the entirety of the My Hero universe, the story cuts away to a riverside, where alone the disheveled woman gives birth to the 2 boys on the filthy riverbank before shortly passing away mere moments after. Her body laying still, motionless, lifeless, and surprisingly tumorless. As we see laying beside her is the hand of her biggest son, All for One, with his iconic quirk-given hole in his hand. Nearby, a group of rats, in seeing the fresh prey of a motionless body and defenseless babies, attempt to eat the trio and rush on to the scene. But before they can finish their feast, in a miraculous moment, the river's current picks up, and the corpse of the mother and her 2 babies are carried downstream and away to safety. Following this event, the story cuts to 1 year later, where we see the world enter a brand new era, as a glowing baby is born, and seemingly out of nowhere, numerous people all around the globe are gifted with superhuman abilities. Studies would show that this surge in superhuman powers wasn't just a coincidence, but a phenomenon that consisted of a new addition to the human genetic factor. Basically, these powers were created by a brand new gene. It's also very interesting to note that the birth of the glowing baby took place 1 year after the birth of All for One and Yoichi, meaning that not only is All for One older than the glowing child, but this confirms that the glowing child was in fact not the first person to have a quirk, as we saw All for One with his quirk as soon as he was born. But anyways, with the emergence of the glowing child and the sudden widespread possession of quirks, governments around the world made the world-altering decision to make all of the information they had on them public, which inevitably led to the creation of the idea that people with power were no longer human, thus leading to widespread chaos. The story then cuts to a couple of years later, where we see an extremist anti-meta abilities group walking through a destroyed and dark city street, encountering a small trash bag wearing All for One. In seeing the small child, the group decide to avoid him, claiming that despite how bad they feel about abandoning a child, they don't want to become infected by an, and I quote, orphan of the paranormal. Yet, as the group turns away, All for One glares at them with that look that just screams, "I'm going to reap your soul," moments before unleashing a spike quirk from his body, brutally ripping and tearing through each of the group's members. Like, I'm talking, he shredded them. And it's here where it's revealed that this spike quirk actually belonged to All for One and Yoichi's mother. That's right, as it turns out, the strange spike-like tumor that was on the woman's body before she gave birth was actually a quirk manifesting in her body, meaning that she was potentially the first ever quirk wielder. So technically, Yoichi and All for One could be the sons of the true mother of quirks. But regardless of this, upon his birth, All All For One, blessed with his own ability, instinctively stole his mother's quirk. And as we see images of a terrifying baby All For One clawing at his dead mother and biting her breast with her stolen quirk, and I mean, sweet Jesus, look how horrifying this thing is. Someone call for an exorcism, dear Lord. The narration explains that from the moment he was born, All For One believed the entire world belonged to him. And if a person can't offer him anything of value, it infuriates him and makes him believe they are nothing but a nuisance. We then once again see Child All For One using his power to attack more people. However, this time a small yoichi interrupts him, throwing a can at his brother, begging him to stop. To which All For One responds by kicking his weak and fragile younger brother. It is then we learn that the reason yoichi is so weak and fragile is because during their time in the womb, All For One stole all of their mother's nutrients, leaving his younger brother far smaller and frailer than he should have been. It's also stated that despite All For One's philosophy of if you can't offer him anything, you are worse than worthless, he still keeps the physically worthless yoichi around with him, not inherently out of love, but due to the fact he sees yoichi as one of his possessions. Brother of the year much? The story then leaps forward another few years to a just slightly older yoichi and All For One, where we see yoichi reading a comic as a nearby radio announces that the glowing baby is now fighting on the front lines defending peace. Oh yeah, the world is still in utter chaos, by the way. All For One asks yoichi what he's reading, to which yoichi replies that he can't read complicated books just yet, so he's studying with comics, noting his amazement with how the author manages to convey a message just through the drawings, and that one day he wants to be like the lead in the story, Captain Hero. The two brothers then sit side by side reading the comic book, as the narration continues, stating that despite the evilness and cruelty within his brother, yoichi still believes in his brother's goodness, because deep down he remembers that even though he was weak and frail, All For One held his hand when they were babies. Bit of a stretch, but I'll accept it. And with this, once again, the story jumps ahead 3 more years, where a teenage All For One meets up with yoichi once again, this time talking about the glowing baby. All For One states that the glowing baby has gathered more than 10 million supporters, but he doesn't understand why. He notes that 50 people were born with quirks in India before the glowing baby, and so the glowing baby has no right to use his notoriety to command so many people if he wasn't really the first one. Which is why, as All For One explains, he killed him and stole his power. Yoichi is shocked and furious at his brother, asking about how he could do such a thing. But All For One responds that he's doing it just like the comics. In the comics, it said, one for all and all for one. And he loved that idea. While the hero fights alone with a secret identity, one for all, the villain reigned through fear and took everything for himself. All for one. Just like how yoichi dreams of being a hero, All For One has the dream of creating a world where everything exists solely for him. In hearing this explanation, yoichi attempts to run away from his brother, and as he does so, the world begins to darken around him. The story then shifts to All For One's perspective, and as he watches his brother run away, time begins to shift drastically as he calls out, "Wait, why are you running? I just gave you power." Immediately after saying this, in the next panel, time shifts once again, as we see that yoichi isn't running alone in the darkness. Kudo is holding him by the hand, pulling him away. All For One, still watching, calls out again, stating, "Who are you? Get away from him, he's mine." There is then one more panel as All For One calls out one more time, "If you're not mine, then you don't," cutting short mid-sentence as the last thing we see is yoichi's hand, the one that was reached out to Kudo, floating, severed, alone in the air, surrounded by blood. And that's it for chapter 407. If you liked this video, don't forget to leave a like. For more content like this, subscribe to the Lunchtime crew. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. It's lunchtime.